Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast. I am your host today, Ken Tucker, and I'm joined by our resident experts, Ian Cantle and Paul Barthel. And together we form the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses. Today is a jam-packed session. I think it may be probably the most important topic that we might cover for most small businesses, and that is what is SEO, and then also, because we're kind of going through the book that Ian and I contributed to, content for local search. How does that kind of shape local search engine optimization? SEO is seriously misunderstood, and it's very misrepresented by the vendor community out there. There are a lot of pitfalls and landmines, and unfortunately, a lot of bad information. And people sell SEO services at a really low cost because it's a commodity to them. They're doing one small piece of SEO and selling that and making it sound like it's all the SEO you need. That's incredibly deceitful, in my opinion. So what we want to do is we want to help small businesses understand what SEO is, what local SEO is, and then how and why content marketing is such a critical component to both SEO and local SEO. So with that, I'm going to get started. Ian, I've got the first question for you, and that is, can you explain what is search engine optimization? What is local search engine optimization? And how are they different?
Sure. And I always like to start this conversation about SEO. So first of all, SEO stands for search engine optimization. And the reason why any business would want to care about this, and they probably know this, but just to make sure we're all level setting and starting from the same spot, is that search engines are one of the most powerful ways that a business can get exposure to people, ideal clients or customers or patients that are looking for their services or products. There's stats out there that 93% of people looking for a product or service come through Google, right? That stat changes year to year, but it's hovered around the same percentage for probably the last 5 to 10 years. Like, it's pretty incredible. And it's more about human behavior than anything else, right? Like, we as humans, when we're searching for a solution to a problem that we have, one of the first things that all of us do is we might ask people we know, but inherently, even if somebody talks about, hey, you should check out XYZ business, they can help you. We will go to a search engine. We will look for that business. So even from a word of mouth standpoint, it's vital. But where it's really important is you need to understand as a business that ranking well on Google, and I'll use Google as kind of the predominant search engine, but it does, it also matters to Bing, Yahoo, kind of, YouTube. Even if you look at, it's becoming more prominent now, but not nearly as prominent. But even TikTok or Instagram or Facebook are kind of search engines, but not really. But to get found, you need to do certain activities. It doesn't happen by accident. And so this service, this requirement to do search engine optimization is really the strategy and the actual doing, the tactics that you as a business need to do in order to show up on search engines, but not just show up on them, show up on page one above your competition. Because all the statistics show that if you show up in position one, or even as low as position 3, you don't want to go below that, because the statistics drop off significantly below position 3. And then if you don't show up till page 2, excuse me, or page 3 or further, essentially you don't exist. There's a joke, and this is such a geeky joke, but hopefully it is as funny to our business listeners as well as it is to us. But what the joke is, where's the best place to hide a dead body? On page 2 of Google, because nobody looks there, right? Like that.
Right.
That is.
Yeah.
So I think that's. Do not hide dead bodies on page 2 of Google. At a high level, that is what search engine optimization is. It's the activity, the strategy, and the activities that you as a business need to do to rank well. So that's SEO at a high level. Local SEO is really a subcategory of SEO. And really the only difference that you need to understand is that local SEO is about the geographic focus that you as a local business have, meaning I live in a town called Bradford. If I'm a dentist in Bradford, I need to focus on my local market more than my national market, my regional market, or worldwide market. So wouldn't it be wonderful if I showed up as the predominant dentist worldwide? Of course it would. That's wonderful. But it actually doesn't mean anything, because the only people I'm going to serve are my local customers. So there's a subset of strategies, tactics, and activities that a business needs to do in order to show up locally on search engines. And so that's really the two big differences. I don't know if I should get into any kind of the specifics of that, but I would say, as a local business, you shouldn't ignore the high level SEO strategies, but you definitely can't ignore the local SEO strategies. Meaning, just as a quick example, and no national business ignores Google business profiles either, because if you're a national business with franchises across the US or Canada, you need to do Google business profiles for every single location, because that will help you on a local level show up for those locations. So for the same reasons, a local business, even if you only have one location, you must do things like optimize your Google business. First of all, get a Google business profile if you don't have one,
Right.
claim it, optimize it, which means doing all of the things that Google wants you to do that align the signals. And we'll probably use this term signals a lot in this conversation, because it's just a framework to understand that you as a business can send out signals to Google that tells Google that when somebody is searching for a particular product or service, that we as a business have all of the right things that Google needs in order to create resonance between what somebody is searching for and what we have as a business, right? That's really the whole goal of SEO on a national or local level, is to create these signals that align with what the person is searching for. So Google can say, hey, you guys are the perfect match for this search. You are the best option that we want to send someone to. And so they're going to put you in position 1. Google's algorithm will put you in position 1, whether it's in the organic results, the map results, whatever part of the search results it is.
Yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is, if you type in a product or a service plus a location, that's an indication to the search engines that you're wanting to do a local search. And so it's actually a slightly different algorithm that is going to kick in. And typically what you see is businesses listed on the Google map results if you're using Google. And, we know that 60 to 70% of all clicks or phone calls happen for the businesses that are in the 3 listings that on the Google map results. So it's critically important. Ian, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a symbiotic relationship between your Google business profile, your website, and everything else that's on the web that sends these signals to both your Google profile and your website. They can stand alone, and you might get lucky, but you really need to look at this as a symbiotic relationship. And we call it the web for a reason, right? Because we want everything to be interconnected. And the more you can help Google understand the interconnectedness of things through the SEO efforts that you're doing, the better.
Yeah, if I can add one thing too, your point about when we put in a local search, like in my circumstance, Bradford, right? So dentist
Right.
Bradford, best dentist Bradford, or dentist near me. The thing to remember too is that because Google, and unless you're using something that hides your IP address or something like that, right? Some people do that, but the majority of us as users do not turn off location based tracking or anything like that on our cell phones. And so Google knows where we are. And if you do a search for, like, this is the reverse of what I'm about to explain, but when we're serving clients, we have a plumber in Moncton, New Brunswick, different province of where we're located. If I do a search for their name, Google's trying to give me local results for that plumber. So I have to be very specific. I either have to hide my IP address so Google doesn't know where I'm from, or I have to add that locality. But when you are in a locality, Google's already connecting that in the background.
Yeah.
And so I think you can't get away from local searches at all. It's just part of the puzzle.
Yeah. Okay, Paul. So let's talk about how content is related to SEO. What are your thoughts?
Well, content is everything, because if you don't have content, Google has no idea that you exist. This is about or what you do. So, it's not only the most important factor in SEO. It's everything, and it needs to be relevant to your business and to what people are searching for. Goes back to what Ian was saying, is that if you're a plumber in a certain area, you want to have content related to that area, and it has to be original. You can't plagiarize content. There isn't really a duplicate content penalty. Google will just ignore it because you're not what Google considers the canonical URL for that content. So it has
What
to.
does that mean, Paul? Canonical URL.
It means that you are the original source of that content. So, and it has to be informative and high quality and well written, and it has to be optimized for search engines, but it has to be written for people. So, and Google, the algorithms are getting smarter and smarter, so to speak. So write your content for people. And if you use the keywords that you want to rank for within that content, and you use related keywords in that content, Google will figure it out. And one thing when we talk about content, people think about blog posts or pages on their website, but there's infographics, there's videos. Video is one of the most important and not done types of content when it comes to local SEO, because images, when you're using images, use alt text in your images. That's if you hover over an image and you see that little text about what the image is, because the algorithms can't really understand. They can't decipher images yet. They need that alt text, and that alt text has to relate to your content. And promote your content on social media, make videos, put them on YouTube. And when you do that, link back to relevant content on your website. Because we've talked about this in the past. You don't own these other platforms. You don't own YouTube. You don't own Facebook. You don't own Instagram. You don't own Pinterest or TikTok or whatever. And they can suspend your account at any point in time. Facebook has made a career out of suspending people's accounts.
Or they take your account outright, like X did to the user who claimed their profile as X when it was Twitter long ago.
Yeah. So when you create content, you have to create a variety of different contents. You have to be on. We've talked about this as well, that your target audience, your prospects, they're going to be on different platforms, and if you're not on the platforms that they're on, that's a missed opportunity. So when you create this content, you have to put it on all these different platforms, and you may have to create different types of content for the different platforms. That's a whole nother discussion. But I guess the biggest thing I see is people not doing video, because this day and age, a lot of people, they would rather watch a video than read a piece of content. So video content is extremely important, and YouTube is the second largest search engine, if you will, on the planet, and Google owns YouTube. So putting video content on YouTube and linking back to your website, Google business profile posts, that's something else a lot of local businesses don't do. And these interconnected signals help Google understand what your business is, what it does. And going back to what Ian said about the geo identifiers, because if you're a local business, like Ian said, hey, it's great if you're in Idaho and someone searches for something and you show up, and someone in New York searching for you and you show up, hey, that's great. But if you're a local service area business, if you're a roofer in Idaho, somewhere in Idaho, you're not going to go to New York to put a roof on somebody's house. Okay. It's not going to happen. So those geo identifiers, like, roofer near me or roofer in St. Charles, Missouri, those are extremely important for local content and local SEO.
Yeah, you guys have both mentioned the word signals. And, I think, a lot of times people get pitched SEO as, we'll write content on your website and we'll do this thing called on-page SEO. And that's where it stops. The reality is, it is important for your SEO to have content in other places, and to use other channels to help promote and drive traffic back to your website, because that sends signals to the search engines. Hey, people are finding this content and they think it's important enough to go to your website. That's a signal. In other cases, they're saying, hey, this is great content. I'm going to share this, and link out to it when I write a blog post about this topic, because I think this does a great job of explaining that. That's another form of a signal. It's a very strong form of a signal, called an inbound link, which is really still, a very important factor. So again, it's not just done in a vacuum. So if somebody comes and pitches you, we'll get you on the first page of Google for $200 a month. That is a one-dimensional SEO tactic. It is not an SEO program designed to be holistic and achieve the best possible results for you. So, Ian, let's talk about, and kind of dig into, content specifically and how it plays a role for local SEO, and include, what's going on now with Google's EEAT, and the role that it's playing in creating content for local SEO.
Sure. Yeah. So, just like Paul said, content is really the fuel that will power your SEO efforts. It's the one thing that will send the signals to Google. And just to extrapolate or extend that thought a little bit more, when we talk about content, at least on this podcast, we're talking about far more than blog posts. Blog posts are really important. Videos are really important. What we're talking about, though, is basically every piece of information that can be created by yourself or somebody else that supports what you do as a business. So what I mean by that is user-generated content like reviews, Google reviews, Facebook recommendations, LinkedIn recommendations, all of those kinds of things are really powerful because, again, they send signals. They send signals that you're a legitimate business and you do what you promise you'll do. And so, we in the business know that it's not just about generating this sudden surge of reviews that's really important for a business. It's about the ranking you have, your overall ranking. It's about the number of reviews you have. It's about the recency of reviews that you have. So, you as a business need to have as part of your SEO strategy, you need to have a review system that's all about how do we turn great satisfied customers or patients into great satisfied reviews, right? And so that's just one little snippet of how local content is really important. And I use reviews as an example because that's always tied to your profile, right? Whether it's and I'm going to use Google way more than I use Facebook because I think the value of the reviews on Google outweigh Facebook's enormously. And even though, reviews on Yelp or Houzz or Rate MDs are important and valuable, they fade in comparison compared to Google because Google loves Google. You're trying to get visibility on the search engine. But Google Business Profiles gives you a host of other locally focused content opportunities, meaning you have the opportunity to create a description about your business, which can include keywords that people are searching for related to your products or services. You have the opportunity to create products within Google Business Profiles, services. You have the opportunity to post updates or events or offers within Google Business Profiles. So I'm really pushing Google Business Profiles a lot because it is your primary system with which to tell Google, other than your website, that you are a legitimate business and you have a lot of updated information and that you need to keep updating that on an ongoing basis. So that's just an example, but you also have directory profiles. There's a whole host of other off-site pieces that help your local SEO rankings. Now, going back to the website, it is your only truly owned property on the internet. You don't own your Google Business Profile, and it can get shut down or paused. You don't own your Facebook profile. It can get shut down and paused, just like you guys were talking about. But your website, truthfully, is your only opportunity for your business to truly have a property on the internet that sends all of the right signals to Google. Ken, you talked about, so actually before I go into EAT, the EAT acronym, from a local standpoint, and some of this is in flux, like, in the business, we're always looking at trends and what's creating a larger or smaller impact from an SEO standpoint. But some of this stuff is still really, really vital. Like, is the NAP, the name, address, and phone number on your website identical to what's on your Google Business Profile? Again, you're trying to tie those signals together for Google so that they're super, super strong. Do you include a link and a map to your location that's from Google and shown on your website, right? Some really simple things that have profound impact. Do you have location pages on your website that explain how you serve particular locations and are again, excuse me, this cough, sends signals to Google that you're looking for? Then as we transition into this idea of what is this acronym that Ken brought up called EAT, it started out as, it's really a framework of understanding what kind of signals Google likes. It's not a ranking factor, but within it are ranking factors. So things like the first E is experience in that acronym, then expertise, then authority, and then trust. And so Google's looking for those things on your website, in your Google Business Profile, in anything that's tied to your business online. So your experience, are you an experienced plumber or are you brand new?
Are you Jimi Hendrix? Are you experienced?
And I would even say the experience ties into, and it all, like, you'll see that it's kind of like a three-dimensional object, this formula or this framework, because you can have different signals coming and going from each of these that tie into other ones. Expertise. Do you have authority or expertise in your space? Do you have credentials. Is there anything that you can show Google and your visitors? Because ultimately, we haven't specifically said this, but the reason Google is a successful search engine is because we as users, I was talking about human behavior before, we as users, more 93 or whatever percent of humans on the planet, when they're searching for information, are using Google for a reason. It's because Google has become a trustworthy source of connecting what I'm looking for with people that provide that. Whatever it is, it could just be information, it could be a business I'm looking for, but in this context, we're talking about businesses, services, and products. And so what all Google's trying to do is retain that dominant position in the marketplace, because it serves them in order to have this dominance position also from a paid standpoint, right? If you want to show up not just organically within Google's search engine, but paid in order to kind of layer on your effectiveness, you're going to pay for paid ads with Google. So we covered experience, expertise, authority. This can also be like, what makes you an authority in this space? Do you speak specifically on topics that people care about? And have you shown authority? Do other people link back to your information? You guys talked about backlinks, right? You might not have used that term, but you talked about signals coming from links from other websites. Do people repost links to your blogs that you're doing because they become an authoritative source of information on a topic, right? For a dentist, like for a local dentist, if you do a blog post that talks about the process of getting dental implants, sounds kind of boring to a lot of people. But if you're a consumer and you're trying to understand, okay, my dentist is suggesting, or I think I have a tooth problem and I think I'm going to have to get a dental implant because that seems to be the gold standard now. What does that process look like? And that might actually take you to a dentist that you're currently not using. And then trust is the final letter in that acronym. So we had experience, expertise, authority, and trust. Trust is all about what trust signals are you sending to Google and to the users? Because again, it's all about the users that are coming to your website from Google's standpoint. Because again, they want to send people to the best source of information because that benefits Google. So trust, do you have reviews on your website? Are there other trust signals that are on your website that are going to tell people that you are trustworthy, right? Do you have case studies? All of that kind of stuff. Again, reviews are massive in that standpoint. Hopefully I covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. One thing we haven't talked about yet, and I thought you were going to go there when you started talking about paid and organic, and the reason that Google operates the way it does is because ultimately it makes its money. It doesn't make any money on organic search, but it makes its money on paid. And they definitely spill over and have a lot of similarities. And again, they can, while nobody will in Google will say this, I think they have a strong correlation. If you're doing one and the other together in conjunction, you're going to get better results. But, it's this notion of buyer intent. So not every keyword you need to worry about ranking for. You need to focus initially, especially, as you're managing your SEO budget and your efforts, you need to be looking at buyer intent driven keywords. And you need to be thinking about your organic SEO almost like how you would think about it when you're running paid ads, because you don't want to run. I mean, in some cases you might, but 95% of the time you want people, when they're clicking on a paid ad that you're spending good money on Google for, to take an action, to book an appointment, to, make a reservation, to come in and make a purchase, buy online, whatever it is. So focus on buyer intent. That's a critical thing that I think way too many SEOs just completely forget. It's like, oh, I can get you ranking for all of these things. But at the end of the day, if people go to your website, but they never schedule a consultation or buy, it's not doing you any good. So
yeah, can I just add a couple things, like just some tips for people to think about? The first, we haven't really talked about keywords, but or even keyword research, But to understand how you're going to win at this game of search engine optimization, whether it's local or national or regional, you have to understand, how do people search for my products or services? And that's where keyword research comes in. Any SEO company, and here's a big tip, if you're talking to an SEO company and they do not do keyword research for you, run as fast as you possibly can. Are there things that, if there's an SEO company, like a dental SEO company, and that's all they work for or with, they probably have a really good idea, just like Ken, Paul, and I would when, we've worked with other roofers or plumbers or whatever. We have a good idea of what the top keywords probably are, and those aid us in our keyword research. But I don't know about you, Ken. I never shortcut that, because I'm always surprised by, like, there's regional differences on how people search for things,
Sure.
even terminology differences, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I
even
don't,
something as simple as, when you do a service plus location,
yeah,
that tends to be the predominant in most places, but there are places where location plus service is more of the norm. And
yeah,
they're two different keyword phrases. Google treats them separately most of the time, if not all the time. And so understanding that nuance is an important thing. And they're different.
yeah,
They're different phrases.
yeah. And just to tie that, my thought together for people, is the whole reason why you care about how people search is because all of this investment you're going to be doing in SEO, in content creation, because again, content is the key signal, is you need to know what content to create. So first of all, you have to understand where you are today, where you want to get to, what keywords will help you get there. But then you need to develop a content plan that's going to create the content using the keywords that people are searching for, that send the right signal to Google, so that you can rank better. And just kind of a final thought on that. I mean, Paul was right in that Google doesn't penalize you for using duplicate content, but you're penalized, and you're penalized because you just created content that's duplicate, that's not going to attract anything to your website. And you probably did that with as a replacement to something you could have done. So it's a lost opportunity.
Right.
So in my mind, you're penalized anyways by your own bad decision,
Right.
because it's not going to help your efforts, which is the whole purpose in creating
Yeah.
the content. There's an opportunity cost for it. And
Yeah.
whatever you invested in that content, even if it was minimal, you just burned money, right?
Right.
So
Right.
invest smartly, and it will pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually setting up the next question I've got for Paul here pretty nicely, which is, content can be daunting and overwhelming for so many people. So what are some of the easiest ways or easy ways for small business owners to create content that is actually going to help them with local SEO?
Well, one of the things that is overlooked a lot, because it costs money to create content. But if you are a local service business, and you have a defined area where you operate, where you need to rank, write about the local area, create location pages, and you can talk about your services within there, but talk about your local area and things to do in that local area, events, attractions. If you if you have relations with other local businesses that do things like related to what you do, but you don't do them, link between those websites. We talked about links, but backlinks, that because Google looks at these local links differently than, let's say you get a link from an edu back to your website, or Google looks at that differently than a link from a local business that's related to what you do.
EDU, by the way, is an educational
educational
company website, like a university, high school, whatever it might be.
Correct. And create frequently asked questions and should ask questions. There's a lot of websites that have facts, frequently asked questions, but there's also questions that people should be asking if they're looking to hire a company or a business that does what you do. There's questions that they should ask, but they don't know that they should ask them. So put that on your website, and when you're creating content, use local keywords. We talked about this, the geo identifiers, because that sends signals to Google about the area you do business in. And again, optimize your content. And there's a lot of technical things that go into optimizing your content schema, things like we've talked about it in the past, but that's something you're probably going to have to hire someone to do. But something else we talked about is repurpose your content, put it on these different channels. If you have a piece of content, turn that into a video and put it on YouTube. If you're someone like an interior designer where what you do is visual, Pinterest is probably a really great platform for you. It's not going to work for everyone. Probably, Pinterest probably isn't going to work for a plumber, but it would certainly work for an interior designer. Get on a podcast, be a guest on a podcast, write guest blog posts for other websites, and that will get you a link back to your website. There's online communities, but get involved in your local area, local events, local charities, things like that. Sponsor an event. I know that can be expensive, but that can definitely, if it's an event like we just talked about, some kind of an event with a high school or a local college, links from these EDUs are really powerful and really important. You might be able to, some chambers of commerce allow you to write an article or, have something on their website about your business, and you can get a link back to your website from that local chamber. And that's powerful. And local directories, get listed on local directories. That's really important. And make sure, I think Ian talked about this, that make sure your NAP, name, address, phone number, is consistent. Get that cleaned up. I know that's not content, but it's really important, because if your information isn't consistent, that's going to hurt you. We talked about videos, images on your website. When you're creating content, pages, blog posts, put images, related images on your website, and make sure you have the alt text. And every once in a while, you're going to have to go through your website and make sure your content is up to date, because not all content is evergreen, which means, like your About Us page is evergreen content. That's probably not going to change too much. Now your staff or team, that might change, but make sure your content is up to date, because if you have old, outdated content, that's not good. I mean, it may not hurt you, but it probably will, because if someone goes to a page with outdated content, I mean, that makes me wonder, me personally, that makes me wonder if this business is really, if they really know what they're doing,
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting too, because we haven't really talked about this either, but it's kind of a follow-on to what you just said, Paul, and that is, the content machine can't stop. I mean, you can't write a bunch of content and then just stop. Google wants to see that you are actively owning and updating and controlling your website and providing value to the end users. And that is best demonstrated through creating new and up-to-date content. So you need to keep focused on that. You also mentioned, and a couple of things that I absolutely love. I think these are just brilliant strategies that way too many people just completely ignore. Guest blog posts and guest podcast appearances. if you do it right, you actually can write your own inbound links back to key pages on your website, not just your homepage. If you're a member of a chamber, you're going to have a link from the chamber back to your homepage because they're going to give you a directory, and that's going to get you a quality backlink from a local authoritative source, which is great. But if you're writing an article about a particular core service that you deliver, you can actually link to that specific service page, or you can link to another blog post that you have on your website to reinforce a different keyword concept, from like a local chamber website, or even an association. If you're a member of a national contractor association, and you can write a guest blog post, a lot of times you have the ability to create your own inbound links and send it right to the content that you want people to see the most if they click through to read more. So that's brilliant. And then the same thing is true with guest podcast appearances. You'll have the ability to do that. So, there are so many easy things. The other thing that you didn't talk about, Paul, which I think it drives me nuts. I mean, it is such a missed opportunity over and over and over again. And that is describing the success stories, the projects that you've done, and delivered. It could be in the form of a case study, as Ian talked about. But if you're a home remodeling contractor, write up a project description about, here's the project we did, here's the problem that we solved for a client, here's the approach that we took to the solution, here's what we did, show before and after pictures, talk about the transformation that was delivered from taking somebody in a state that they weren't really happy in to where they're really very happy now, and include the local information. You don't have to put their address in, but put the neighborhood or the suburb that you delivered, that project in. Massive opportunity, and nobody's doing it right. I mean, it drives me freaking nuts. We work hard, and it should be, it just should be baked into your business operations as a way that you operate your business and to conduct your business. Then it's a no-brainer. That content's already created and generated. Ian, I've got kind of a hodgepodge of things that I wanted you to kind of just go through, because these are some of the more important elements that I think a lot of times it's easy to gloss over, or in some cases you've already talked about them. Maybe you can just add to it if there's something that comes to your mind. But I wanted you to talk about some things that I think are important for local SEO. We've talked a little bit about keywords, YouTube, this concept of domain authority. You've mentioned backlinks. You've talked about the Google Business Profile and online directories. Just kind of go through and, if you feel like there's anything that we need to add on any of those kinds of things, I think that'd be fantastic, because I think these are really all critical components to this idea of local SEO.
Yeah, I'll start with keywords. What I find so interesting about this is, and depending who you surround yourself with, as far as SEO experts or noise in the industry, you will get differing views on the relevance of keywords. And just so our listeners know, it doesn't diminish the value of keywords in any way. What it is it's experts arguing over whether keywords or topics are the most important part most important thing in Google's view, but the one doesn't take away from the other at all. It's just like,
Right.
imagine, scientists that study the atom arguing over, well, is it white or is it blue? I don't know. Like, it's just, we geek out on this kind of stuff because we're trying to create a better mousetrap for our clients. But don't get caught up in the noise. Keywords are so vital. And I'll give you an example that I've recently come across with two new clients. One, they couldn't understand why their website, which was really well done, actually. It was a good, well-designed website. They had invested in SEO in the past with a company. They weren't super happy with them because they weren't getting the results they wanted. But I have to say, like, overall, a lot of the checkboxes were checked off. But one of the biggest things that I couldn't believe was missed was that this company's particular service was a very niche or niche service. And the SEO company, even though the content was on the website, they did not optimize the homepage for it or even the service page for it. And it was the number one keyword that consumers in the area used to look for this home service. And so when we did our SEO audit for them, I had to like double check our work a few times because I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, how could anybody not do this for their primary service? But that the fact is, this happens all the time. Just what, Ken, I think you opened it up with talking about how everybody in the industry, meaning any compatible or service that ties into SEO, meaning web designers, social media people, like there's people who are really, really good at one core function of marketing, and they've decided that, hey, I need to attract more business. And frankly, they've seen the money, because there is good money in SEO if you do it properly, but there's also a heck of a lot of work to do it well.
And there's also a heck of a lot of return.
Yeah, for the business,
Right, right.
itself. But what I'm trying to say is, you look up a web designer in your area, the chances are 95% of them, that's just a rough stat that I'm throwing out, but you will see that the lion's share of web designers will say that they are SEO experts. But I have to tell you right now, just because I fixed so many of these web designers' websites for SEO, they aren't. They might understand the concept, but man, they're, especially if they don't do the keyword research first. So the same is true for all of the other kind of parallel services that put SEO on their websites. You'll see this a lot with like paid ads experts. They talk about SEO as well. Well, we do paid ads. We're SEO experts now too. It's not always true. So keywords are really vital. Understanding how vital they are is really important, and how keywords tie into topical discussions and synonyms, right? It's all tied together.
Yep.
YouTube, you talked about, Paul talked about the importance of video and how YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world, which surprises most people. Here's the truth. If you create it, actually, if you search for anything on not anything, but if you search for, say you have a problem with your air conditioner, search for it on Google. The chances are extremely high that a bunch of videos will show up near the top of the rankings. This is because Google understands the value and the importance of video content. People love digesting video content. It doesn't diminish the value of the organic results below it, because oftentimes people who watch a bit of a video will then look for more detail, right? Video takes time to digest, whereas text you can skim, right? So there's different needs there, but it's really, really important. Just kind of a parallel thought too is Paul talked about creating video. If you're creating a blog post on something, create a video. The reverse is true. And I don't like giving away this tip because it's like a secret sauce of what we do. But we've been doing it for years with we would call it rich content, right? So whether it's audio content or video content, if we use that as kind of our primary content source or type, it's so easy to create other content from that. Meaning, say we have a client, say they're a CPA, and they do a video on the topic of tax preparation. If they do a video on the topic of tax preparation and they're just riffing away on this topic, we can then take that video, we can strip it out, we can transcribe it first of all, so that we now have a transcription. But then we can actually build out blog posts from that content. We can probably, the content and the topics are so rich, we can probably split it apart into maybe 5 blog post contents. And now think about, heck, they might have even shared some graphics in that video. Now we've got copy, we've got images, Well, that's pretty much what social media is, right? And we can now take that content, we can post it on social, driving people back to the video, driving people back to the blog post. So it's
Yeah.
it is such a rich content form that people love, that is very shareable, that should definitely be used. It's also the hardest type of content to produce, and some people hate to be on video. So that's something they have to overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't, I mean, we've already talked about Google Business Profile and online directories quite a bit.
Yeah.
Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about backlinks, and then I'll move on to Paul, because we've got some other things I really want to make sure we get to in this episode.
Awesome.
Too.
Yeah. And I'll just mention, because it was in your list of topics, domain authority. I won't spend
Oh,
any
yeah,
time
yeah.
on it,
Yeah.
except
Good.
domain authority is not a Google thing. It's an industry metric to help understand. It's an aggregate metric that takes a whole bunch of other metrics and says, here's how we think Google views the authority of your domain name. Meaning, for me, it's outsourcemarketing.ca. For you, it's Changescape Web, right? How does Google view that? And it's taking all sorts of different metrics and compiling them together, meaning how long has that website been around? How many backlinks are going to it? How much content is on it? There's all sorts of things that go into it, but it gives you a number. And in all things being equal, if your domain authority is higher than your nearest competitors, you will probably get more traffic, with all the other right stuff being done, right? Saying if you and your competitor were to do the exact same activities, you will get more traffic. That's just a simple way to think about that. What were the other things, Ken?
Backlinks.
Backlinks. So again, backlinks, it's all about attracting, first of all, creating great content, because people will naturally link to great content, especially if you're sharing it on the internet, on social. So create great content first, but then you can also have a backlink strategy where you find people that are authorities in the space. People, press is always looking for information. Anytime you can provide information to somebody else that's helpful, they will usually link back to you, and that's very powerful. You talked about guest blogging, super powerful way to show your authority and then get people to link back to your website. Yep. Being a speaker in a forum or an event, and then online directories, of course, is a great way to. There's thousands of online directories. And when you get your site listed on those, which is really just a slam dunk for us as SEO companies, we always include this as part of our process, because again, it's just sending more signals to Google that you are the business that you say you are. You put in the keywords that are about your services or products you're providing, and it will help you with your ranking 100%.
Yep. So Paul, what can small businesses do to improve their local SEO? I know there are some concepts that Google puts out there. Can you talk a little bit about those and what they mean?
Yeah. So when we talk about local SEO, at least when it comes to Google, your Google Business Profile and your in Google Maps is practically the same thing. Okay, it's not, but they're very tightly connected. So there's relevance, prominence, and proximity. And one thing when it comes to local SEO, proximity is extremely important. The further away that a searcher is from your location, even if you're a service area business and your address isn't listed on your Google Business Profile, when you set it up, you have to give Google an address, because Google uses that as your base, so to speak. And the further away a searcher is for that, the harder it's going to be for you to rank. So that's really important to understand. So relevance, is consistently posting content, and not just on your website, but also on your Google Business Profile. And you have to link between those two things. Links between your Google Business Profile and your website are extremely important. And a lot of people don't realize this, but you can link. A lot of people know that you can link from your Google Business Profile to something on your blog post, but you can also link the other way. And prominence, that's really that comes to your credibility, your reputation, and this is where reviews come in. Reviews are important here. And we keep talking about it, but high quality content that people will share. And posting, this goes back to guest posting, writing guest posts for associations or educational institutions or your local chamber of commerce. If your local chamber has a podcast, and more of them are actually starting to do that, get on that podcast. That helps build credibility and authority, and it's just another opportunity to get a link back to your website from a prominent institution, if you will. And then proximity, I talked about proximity. I kind of started with that because that's the most important one, but proximity is, you just can't do anything about that. Okay, you are where you are, and the searcher is where they are, and the closer the searcher is to you, the more likely you are to show up in that Google Maps result.
Paul, I disagree with that a little bit. You can do a lot about it, actually, and that is by writing about the locations that you serve and putting that content on your website. Sure, it's a natural limiting factor, but there are ways to overcome it. But again, it's all driven about writing content about the locations that you serve.
Well, yeah, that will help, but I think what I've noticed is, let's say you're a painter and you're in a certain area, and someone searches for a painter, and they're 20 miles away, and there's 50 painters between you and them.
Yeah,
it's going to be difficult. I mean, yes, you're correct that putting those location pages on your website will definitely help, and putting a map on that location page will help. But
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a factor of the density of the competition, in a particular area that you're trying to compete for. And if you're not close to that location, but you're trying to rank for that location, and like you said, there are a whole lot of other companies that are more closely located, yeah, it's a major challenge.
But if the competition isn't dense, then yeah, you have a very good chance of ranking very well. But and then relevance and prominence, that comes to review velocity. Reviews are social proof, and it's a very strong signal to Google that, and we've talked about this in the past, it can, even from a consumer standpoint, it can be the tipping point. If you and a competitor, all things are mostly equal, and you have more reviews and better reviews, that can be the determining factor for someone to say, okay, I'm going to go with this business instead of this one. And review velocity, that's the pace at which you get customer reviews, because reviews have a shelf life, so to speak, in Google's eyes. Yeah, maybe 2 years ago you had 250 5-star reviews, whatever it was, but that was 2 years ago. Things change. Nothing is static, and Google does take that into account. So, and review validity, Google tries to monitor that. There is a way to contest reviews. I won't get into that, but reviews are just critically important, and you have to have a strategy in place. You can actually automate those review requests, but you have to have a strategy in place, and that's where marketing agencies like Ian and us can help. But if you don't have reviews and your competitor does, you're at an immediate disadvantage.
Ian, I think this was a term or a phrase that we kind of came up with when we were working on this section of the book, because I know you and I wrote this chapter of the book, Content for Local Search. We came up with this idea of the 3 C's of SEO. So what are those 3 C's of SEO?
Yeah, so the 3 C's are: you must be current, you must be consistent, and you must be complete. And so I'll just describe a little bit about what that means. And current should be obvious, right? If you're a business, you want to make sure that the content you're creating for SEO purposes is current. So a good example of that is we have a windows and doors company as a client. The rebates available, the rebates and grants available change every single year. And so every year we are producing or updating a blog post about those rebates, because that's one of the most searched for things related to that particular service. And you might have a service-based business like that, where there's things change in the industry because of how, whatever it is, whatever could be involved. Might be interest rates this year, right? Like interest rates are radically changing in the industry, and financing rates. So you have to be current, because people are looking for current and update information, and Google slants the results towards that. Consistent. Your SEO efforts must be consistent. Actually, this kind of ties in, actually, consistent and current, but you can't look at your SEO investment as a one and done kind of thing. You like, oh, I invested in that last year, or I invested in that the year before. Ken has reinforced this thought in so many of our podcasts, and you express it well, Ken. But you have to think of your online property just like you do your physical property. You need to continue to invest in it in an ongoing basis, just like you pay for electricity, water, heat, cooling, the design effectiveness of your space, so people feel welcome, you feel up to date. The same thing is true with your website and your SEO efforts. And then complete, you need to darn well make sure that you are maximizing every possible signal that Google wants to see, because that is the only way to win. Because what is often overlooked in businesses when they're looking at their online visibility and their online presence, they forget that they don't live in a bubble. Like, oh, this is what I invested last year, so I'm going to invest this year, or I don't need to do this, whatever. But you don't live in a bubble. Google search engine is probably one of the clearest forms of the type of world we live in, that you are in constant competition with everybody else that provides that product or service in your area. So you cannot, and this has only risen dramatically even more since COVID, right? Everybody woke up and they're like, we lost 2 months worth of business. Now we need to gain that back. So you absolutely need to make sure that you complete all your SEO efforts.
Paul, we're going to wrap up. We talked a little bit about this, but not in any detail. So I wanted to dig into this. Does it make sense to pay for ads? Because that's not SEO. That's what we call SEM. And just a tip for everybody, if somebody comes to you selling you SEM, they may pitch it like it's SEO, but it's not. It's running paid ads. They may do a little bit of SEO for you, but their strategy is really to sell you paid ads. And the problem with that is you stop running the ads, your traffic goes away. Whereas SEO is an investment to keep that traffic coming to your website over time. So do ads actually help with SEO? And are we in a situation where all businesses really need to think about SEO? Can you kind of talk a little bit about those?
Well, according to Google, ads and SEO are completely separate. I think they're full of it. But yeah, it can make sense to pay for ads, especially if you're a new business, and you don't have a lot of that expertise, authority, trust that we talked about, because SEO is a long-term strategy, and that's what people need to understand. You don't implement SEO strategies and then 2 days later you're ranking number one for everything. That's not how it works. It's a long-term strategy. Whereas paid ads can bring you immediate business, but you are paying per click. So and like you said, you stop running the ads, that traffic goes away. So I look at paid ads as a supplement to SEO, but paid ads should never be your primary strategy, because that, like I said, if it goes away, if you turn those ads off, you lose all your traffic if that's your primary strategy. So if they have the budget to invest in both, yes, they should. If you only have the budget to invest in one or the other, that depends on where. So which one do you invest in then? That depends on where your business is at the point, and that's when you need to sit down and have a little bit of a strategy session. But then there's a lot of businesses that say, I don't need SEO because I get all my business from referrals or this. Well, what happens if that dries up? What happens if those referrals stop coming in? Now you're not visible digitally because you haven't invested in SEO. So I guess I would say there are businesses that don't need to invest as heavily in SEO as other ones, but every business, I think, needs SEO to some degree.
Or they can benefit from it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think the other thing too about, doing paid ads in conjunction with organic SEO is you can learn a lot from your paid ads to help drive and define and and round out the content that you need to help rank organically. So, and again, a lot of people they don't make the connection. As a matter of fact, too many businesses hire somebody to run paid ads and somebody to do SEO, and they're going to fight each other. I guarantee it. Especially in this market, there are so many people who've, because of COVID and they decided to change careers, they're now wearing the hat where they're saying, hey, we're a web designer or we're an SEO or whatever. They're hungry. They're going to come in, they're going to take whatever business they get and they're going to try to, to expand it through their own self-interest, not through the best interests of the business. So I love this topic. I think we all do. I know it's super important. I knew we were going to run late on this one because it's just, probably the most molecularly dense topic that we talk about on this podcast. But I think it's also probably the most misunderstood and probably the most misrepresented by the marketing community at large. So Ian, why don't you take us out?
Sure. If I can add one more, I'm taking, because you handed it over to me. I'm taking.
You can do whatever you want now.
The one thing I would say too is that, and we've experienced this, so I'm sharing an experience with people that hopefully is valuable. But when you invest in SEO, your return on investment only grows over time, and your cost per lead usually diminishes over time. And that's a really, really big, important concept to grasp, because in paid ads, your return on investment usually diminishes over time, and your cost per lead usually expands and gets higher over time. And I can tell you from experience that in several industries that we cover paid ads and organic SEO for, paid ads have exploded cost-wise, like cost per lead have doubled or tripled in the last year alone, whereas organic leads continue to outperform cost-wise paid ads significantly. And Paul's concept of layering ads on top of SEO makes so much sense. But if you're just, building your business on paid ads, man, you're gonna lose eventually, because you won't be able to sustain that long term.
Yep.
So now I'll do exactly what you said, Ken.
All right.
So thank you to our listeners for joining us today. We really appreciate you joining us. Please share this with other people, other business owners you think would find this valuable. And until next week, keep calm and market on.